amazing to know that God is on his 10th month, while the whole world thinks it's the 12th month. This is amazing, really. That's why the beast changed this time, so that we get lost. But today we begin the new moon of the 10th month in heaven, the month of Tebet. We have finished the previous month, the 30 days, the 30 previous days were for the 9th month. Now we are in the month of Tebet. The 9th month, it was Kislev. We saw it. And God has his own calendar. When he says 10 or he says 6 or 5 or 1st, or you should be knowing. God's people should be together with him when he's counting. Should be keeping his own calendar in his things. So now we are in the 10th month. We are going to establish this study for today, for this new moon, and we are going to see exactly what God is doing with these people in the preparation for the kingdom. Who are God's people, and how he is making sure the people will be prepared and ready for the kingdom. He will have a people ready who will be standing peculiar with his laws, with his calendar, in the time he establishes the kingdom. So this is how we get to it, by studying and by conforming to his will. So now, today we're going to study the book of Zechariah chapter 1, the whole chapter. Let's go into that chapter. We will see what God is doing with his people in the last days. Now let's read from verse 1.
In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius,
Right?
came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah.
You see how God speaks? He talks about his calendar. And when he says in the 8th month, it's not meaning August. He means his month, the 8th month. We saw the 8th month, which is the month out after Tishri, which was the 7th month. Next is Sheshvan. So we had Sheshvan, and next Kislev, and today Tebet. So get acquainted with the Bible, with how God counts. When he says in the 8th month, you should be knowing exactly what God is talking about. Now, look, this chapter starts with the month, with the 8th month. Do you understand? So what God is saying through the Bible, he's in acquaintance with his own Bible, own calendar. And when he's talking to his people, he is talking pertaining to the calendar, pertaining which month it is. Now he starts with Zechariah chapter 1. When you did not know about the month of the 8th month, which is the month of Sheshvan, you will never know what he's talking about in Zechariah chapter 1. You have to be acquainted with his counting. Now he starts with saying, in the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah. So you see, the 8th month starts, it comes after the month of the Tabernacles, which is the 7th month. Now, after the Tabernacle, they went to the 8th month. That's when the word came to Zechariah. Now, he's telling us exactly when he communicated with Zechariah. Now, let's go to 1 TG 11.3 there.
Here we are told that the prophet Zechariah was called to his prophetic office in the 2nd year of Darius, the king. Why was he called in this particular year?
Why? Why would God call Zechariah on the 8th month? Why was he calling him on that month? Now, how would you know this month? You know, because it starts from the counting from the new moon. And then this new moon, we have started the 10th month. So it means the month of Kislev finished yesterday at sunset. We start now the month of Tebet. Now, this month, this counting is what is in the Bible. This is how God counts. Now, we are in the 10th month. Now, he's talking about the 8th month. How do you understand what God is talking about when you're not even acquainted with his calendar? You should be knowing when the 8th month started. It started on a new moon. So today, we are on the new moon of the 10th month. And look at how the world is as opposed to, this is 10th month, but what is it in the world? The 16th day of the 12th month. Listen, this is confusion itself. But when you want to worship God, you keep the calendar in the Bible. It's now talking about the 8th month of in the 2nd year. of Darius. Darius, in his second year, that's when God called Zechariah. Do you understand? Now here we are saying, why was he called in that particular year? Why? Right, finish off there. Mm-hmm.
For the answer, we shall turn to Ezra.
Right. So for us to understand why God called Zechariah on that 8th month, let's turn to Ezra chapter 4, verse 24. Right?
Then ceased the work of the house of God which is at Jerusalem.
Right?
So it ceased unto the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia.
Right. So it was after Babylonian Empire. Now we are in the 2nd year of Medo-Persia. So that year, the 2nd year, that's when the work ceased. The work ceased. God's work ceased. Now, that's why Zechariah was called. Each time there is a call for a prophet, it means God's work has ceased. So when it ceased, and the people who are working, and those people, the ministers who are working, God sees they have ceased to progress with the light. And he calls a prophet. That's what he does. Now here we are seeing they have ceased God's work. And then Zechariah was raised. The prophet was raised because the work had ceased. Right? Now, read on. Obviously then.
Obviously, Zechariah was called at that particular time because the work of the temple at Jerusalem was curtailed and abandoned.
Right. So people had abandoned God's work in the temple in Jerusalem. That's why Zechariah was called. On the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, in the 8th month, the month of Sheshvan, and Zechariah was called. Why? Why do we need prophets? We need prophets when God's people stop. Even Elijah, who was promised. Elijah the Tishbite. Check. Ahab was the ruler of Israel at that time when Elijah was raised. Why was he raised? Because Ahab, his wife was called Jezebel. And he had all the prophets of Jezebel. The whole Israel at that time was worshipping Jezebel, the prophets of Baal. You understand? So God's work had ceased and Elijah was called. Now we are promised also in the last days that he will raise Elijah with the statutes and judgment in Malachi chapter 4 verse 4 to 5. Why? Why raise Elijah? Because the work had ceased to progress with the light. Of course, we see on the chart here we have 5 angels' message. And we see people stuck on the 3 angels' message. So it means it ceased. The work is ceased. God saw that the work of progressing with the angels' message is in Revelation 14, verse 6 up to 17. There are 5 angels' messages, but he saw that we went as far as Sister White being called as the 3rd angel's message. What about the 4th? What about the 5th? He saw that we did not progress with that light, calls Elijah. That's why he prepared Elijah. He had foreseen already the end from the beginning, that people will cease and stop by the 3 angels instead of topping with these other 2. So he raises a prophet to continue with the light. Men can abandon the work. They can stop working, but that does not mean that God is going to stop. God will still continue with those who are willing. That's what he has done in all ages. When Christ came, they had stopped with the light. They did not want new light from Christ. So he did not stop with the then Jewish temple. He did not stop with it. He progressed with the Christian church. And the Christian church, when it was invaded by Constantine, the devil thought now God is abandoning, everything is at hold tight. But God had to raise the reformers. Martin Luther, yeah? All the Campbells, John Knox, Charles Wesley, and what, they were raised to continue with the work. And even William Miller came in 1831 to continue with the work, and Sister raised in 1840, Sister White raised in 1844 to continue with the work. And even in our time, when we are stuck where Sister White died in 1915, and we are stuck there, we don't want to continue with the light, he raises Elijah to continue with the 2 more angels until he comes. And when we stop, he raises a prophet. Now, let's read on. So we have seen that the work had ceased. That's why Zechariah was raised. So read on point 2 there. It says,
The Lord, therefore, through the prophets Zechariah and Haggai,
right?
sent a message of rebuke to the builders and asked them to quickly resume building.
Right? So let's go to our chapter, Zechariah chapter 1. We saw it on verse 1. We have elaborated to see why God called Zechariah and Haggai. Because God's work of construction of the temple in Jerusalem had stopped, had ceased. So God called Zechariah and Haggai. Now, let's go to verse 2 up to 6. Yeah?
The Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers. Therefore, say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts.
Right?
Be ye not as your fathers,
Right?
unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye now from your evil ways, and from your evil doings.
Right?
But they did not hear, nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord.
Right?
Your fathers, where are they?
Where are they?
And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers? And they returned and said, Like as the Lord of hosts thought to do unto us,
Right?
according to our ways and according to our doings, so hath he dealt with us.
So what had they seized?
Building.
They had also seized the prophets, my statutes, and my commandment. They had seized. Are we at the time when we have ceased to keep the feast? The statutes are the feast. Are we at the time when we have ceased to keep the feast? We are actually saying, from the time they were, changed, these times were changed in the Dark Ages. But in our time, we have stopped them completely and said they were nailed to the cross. Are we at that time? This is the time he raises a prophet. He did raise a prophet to our fathers, Zechariah and Haggai, when the statutes also and the commandments ceased to be kept. He raised them. When they ceased building the temple, how do they build the temple? By keeping the statutes and the judgments. And God is saying, these ceased in the time of Zechariah and Haggai. And in our time now, are they there? You can see people pronouncing them. They were nailed to the cross. They were nailed. We will never. And God will not stop with them. He will raise a prophet to continue with the statutes and judgments. Like he did with Zechariah and Haggai. He continued with them with the statutes like he did with Elijah, the Tishbite. When he was raised, Ahab had now diverted the worship of God to the worship of Baal because there were no statutes and judgment. And you know what? If you want to attack God, stop his statutes. Because it actually says, my statutes and my judgments and my commandments. Attack him on those corners, those points. Then you have attacked the whole heaven. Because they have like it is with any country. Countries have commandments. They have got statutes. Yeah, we have statutes. Bank holidays, Africa Day, whatever, all these. Attack them on those. You are attacking them. You have rebelled. So same with God. He has his own days. He has his commandments. We know the 10 commandments. He has his statutes. We know he has all the Passover, the Pentecost, the Feast of Tabernacle. But when you want to be at loggerheads with him, change the dates of these camp meetings, or change the dates of the Passover, or disregard the Passover and stay without it, and then call yourself God's people. I'm saying, the question is, who are God's people at the last time? Who are they? Are those who will continue with the then prophet, who is Elijah, who had been promised to continue with the statutes and judgment like it was with Zechariah and Haggai? Now, let's read on from 1 TG 11, 4.5 there, yeah? The builders.
The builders were first reminded that they were in Babylon because their fathers had not obeyed the word of the Lord
Why
that
did they
came
go
to
to
them.
Why did they go to Babylon? Why? Because they had stopped keeping the statutes. They had stopped keeping the commandments. That's why they were sent. Why were they sent to Babylon? Because there in Babylon they stayed without the statutes. They lived as and when, anyhow, without God's commandments or without God's statutes. There are no Passovers there. There are no feasts there. So when you live that life, you are sent to Babylon. You can see before Abraham was called, he was in Ur of the Chaldeans. He was in Babylon. What were they doing there with his father Terah? They were not keeping God's statutes. They were not keeping the Passover or the Pentecost or the Tabernacle. They were not. They were living in the Chaldeans or in Babylon. They were Babylonians. But when he was called to go to God's country to keep the statutes and judgment. All these Passovers, the feasts. When you go to God's land, you'll find they are there. Why? This is the design of God's land, so that it will make sure the people will keep the statutes, the Passover. When you talk about it, you go there in Jerusalem and you find them there. God designed the place that the place will be. That's why he will be taken from the Babylonian or from the area of the Chaldeans and sent to Jerusalem or Canaan. Why? God has his own place where he has designed that this place should keep Passover, should keep Pentecost, should keep Tabernacle there in that place. So, but when you stay in that place and say, I do not want to keep this feast and what, he sends you to Babylon. So the whole life of the Israelites was in and out, Babylon, Canaan, Babylon. So they in actual fact, they had two passports. The first passport was a Canaanian passport. I mean, a Babylonian when they were in Orbit. So when he relocated to Canaan, he had a Canaanian or in Israel passport, right? When they stopped keeping the feast, they acquired a passport for living under Nebuchadnezzar. It was Babylonian. So when they finished the 70 years, they went back to Canaan. So it was like this: Babylon, Canaan, Babylon, Canaan. And then the very church of God, which proclaimed to be the church of God, is either it's in Babylon or in Canaan. So where are they? So we are studying today, who are God's people in this last day? Who are they? Now he's talking about your fathers. You know, the design was that when we are saying we are spiritual Israel, so it means those Israel by flesh are what the Bible terms your fathers. You understand? So, but here we are spiritual now, we are the children. So you have to be acquainted with that terminology when the Bible says your fathers. Your father is relating to the Israel by flesh. And when it talks about us as children, it's our spiritual Israel. So we have to find out who are the Israelites. So read on where you left, yeah?
The builders were first reminded that they were in Babylon because their fathers had not obeyed the word of the Lord that came to them through the prophets.
Right.
That for their sins, the temple and their kingdom were destroyed.
Right.
The builders were plainly told that if their project was ever to prosper, they would have to avoid the course pursued by their fathers and give special heed to the prophets Zechariah and Haggai. The builders promised that they would not walk in the ways of their fathers.
Right. That's what he said. That's what God said to them. If you want to walk in the same way like what your fathers did when they went into Israel, what happened? They were destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar came and took them off. The temple, that's what happens when God is angry, when you don't keep the statutes, you don't keep his commandment. That's why he destroys even the temple, everything. He doesn't even want it. Yeah. He wants you to go back to the statutes and the commandments. He doesn't want. He destroyed everything and everyone was captured to Babylon and under Nebuchadnezzar now. So he did that because of the statutes and the judgment. And you will see even nowadays why it is nothing to do with the temples are like ghosts. Because ask yourself one question: do we have the statutes? Do we have the commandments? Or in an indirect way, God is doing it and making sure that why make noise for me every time. You are making noise without these statutes. Why are you doing that? So it's another communication coming to us. Let's find out what communication is this. Right. Let's read on. It was in the 8th month we saw it.
It was in the 8th month that Zechariah delivered them this reformatory message. The Jews, hearty acceptance of it, prepared the way for another message.
Right.
And it came within the space of 3 months.
Thank God. We are being told that they heartily accepted the message of Zechariah and Haggai. And then that prepared the way for another message. Now, let's see what is coming on verse 7 and verse 8. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 7 and verse 8, right?
Upon the 24th day of the 11th month.
Do you see now? They are in the 11th month. After Tebeth, that's the next new moon on the 11th. We are today, the new moon today is for the 10th month. And then after Tebeth, we go to the 11th month. Yeah? We go to the Shebat, right? And then after Shebat, we go to Adar. But God's people do not know the counting of the Bible at all. And how do we study these prophecies without knowing the calendar? So we have to be acquainted with this calendar first. When we read, we understand what God is talking about. Now, in the 11th month, upon the 4th and the 20th day, which is 24, right, of the 11th month. So it's 24 Shebat. The Bible should tell us. Read verse 7 to 8, right?
Upon the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month Shebat.
So after Tebeth, the new moon next month is the new moon of Shebat. Do you understand? We are together with God. We are following the Lamb. Whithersoever he goeth. And this is what excites heaven. That's why I say, when Elijah brings the statutes and judgment, this will send the heart of the fathers to the children. And the children, you see what connects them? Is the calendar. What connects them is the statutes, which are in the calendar, knowing that today heaven has got a new moon. Don't tell me heaven doesn't have a new moon. When Isaiah chapter 66 verse 22 says, in the new heaven and the new earth we shall be keeping from one new moon to another. From one Sabbath we will come in front of God. So do you think it's going to start when we are in heaven or already today? They are in the new moon. It's good to know that God is with us on the new moon today.
Amen.
This is what is exciting when we say, who are God's people? Who are God's people? Do you understand that when they received the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost, in heaven they were assembled on the day of Pentecost, and Christ was inaugurated. It's there in Christ Object Lessons, page 119. It tells us when the inauguration was done on the day of Pentecost in heaven, then the token of the Holy Spirit was given to the disciples when they were assembled in Jerusalem. They started speaking in tongues. So they were together. So we continue together with heaven on the new moon, on the statutes, on the day of Pentecost, on the Passover, on the Feast of Tabernacles. Don't mix the dates. Be on the actual date. How do you know this is the date? From the new moon. Because it's every 30 days. That's the new moon. If you had eyes, spiritual eyes, you'll be seeing that there is a gathering in heaven. They are on a new moon. And there is a gathering on earth. It's a new moon. But my question is, who are God's people in the last days? Who are these promised ones who will walk with the Lamb whithersoever he goeth? Who are those walking with the Lamb, keeping his times? The Sabbath, the Pentecost, the Passover, the new moon. You are not God's people by just theory. You are walking together with God. When he's on a new moon, you are on the new moon. When this is what it is to go to walk together with Christ like it was with Enoch. Now let's hear on verse 7 and 8. Now it is established from this Tebeth, which is today, beginning the new moon, then next month it is Shebat. Right? Right, read on.
Upon the 24th day of the 11th month,
Right?
which is the month Shebat, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying, I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom,
Right.
and behind him were there red horses, speckled and white.
Right. You see, God has seen that after Zechariah had proclaimed the statutes and judgment for them to continue with the reformation, for them to continue building the temple, they accepted that message from the prophets heartily. Now came the prophets. Now, because without that acceptance, they wouldn't be given that prophecy. Now, this is a prophet. If you do not know what God is talking about in Shabbat or Tebeth or his calendar or what, how then will you be introduced to this prophet? Because there's a prophet there that is, he says, he saw by night, I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse. And he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom, and behind him were there red horses, speckled and white. Now that's a prophecy. So without understanding the statutes and judgment, you can't be given that prophecy. But we are going to study about these prophets today. You and I, we have to say, thank God for the new moon. We studied that prophecy on Zechariah chapter 1, verse 1. Because other people say, this prophecy, this Bible, the Old Testament should be disregarded with. But look, it's talking about our time. It is talking about our time. So we should be knowing what is happening through these prophecies. They are the ones enlightening us so that we know which path we are following and how we should walk in those paths. Now, let's hear for the interpretation of that. Let's go to, for the interpretation of this symbolism, we shall read the prophet's interrogation and the angel's explanation of it. So they are interrogation there on verse 9. Let's hear. When we proceed from verse 9 to 11, we will hear now. We want to interpret that prophecy, right? Verse 9.
Then said I, O my Lord, what are these?
What are these? We have seen these red horses, speckled and white. What are these? Right?
And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will shew thee what these be.
Right?
And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom the Lord hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth.
You see, this prophet is saying, these are they who God sent to walk to and fro in the earth. Yeah. Now we are hearing the interpretation of these red horses and speckled and white. Now let's read on.
And they answered,
They answered what?
the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest.
You see, these red horses and the speckled and white, they say, we have finished. God is saying, these are they whom the Lord had sent to walk to and from through the earth. We are reading from Zechariah 1, verse 9 to 11. Now, this is an answer we are getting from these speckled and white and red horses. They say, we have walked through the whole earth, and the whole earth is still, is quiet and still. Now, what is this all about? What is all this all about? Now, we will understand. Let's go to 1 TG there, 11.5. Yeah?
Since the horses are sent by the Lord to walk to and fro through the earth,
Right?
and since they have the ability to speak, all this very obviously reveals that the horses are symbolical of the Lord's messengers.
Right. Because the horses don't speak, my dear. They don't speak. But since they are speaking, these red horses and the white speckled and white horses, they are speaking. So these are messengers. These are messengers. These are actually people. Because who speaks? Horses don't speak. But who does speak? It's people. These are messengers. Because these horses are sent by God through the whole earth. So these are messengers sent by God through the whole earth. Now, let's get the meaning. These horses are messengers because they are sent from God and they speak. Do you understand? Now, read on. The red,
The red, speckled, and white several species of horses,
Right?
depict a group of servants of varied races and nationalities.
Do you see now? When the messengers were there in the Hebrew nation, they were only from one nation, which was the Hebrew nation. But here we are seeing a species. The speckled and white and red. These are several species of horses. Did you see that? These horses are not alike because some are red, some are white, some are speckled. So these are not same nationality like it was with the Hebrew nation. It was one nation. But here, these messengers should be several nationalities. Do you understand? Now, read on there. The horses.
The horses, therefore, cannot be taken to symbolize either the Hebrew servants of Zechariah's day or those of Christ's day, because the Lord's servants
In those days.
the Lord's servants in those days were all of one race,
Right.
Jews, not red, speckled, and white.
Right?
Having,
Every-
having fulfilled their mission, the horses reported that they have walked to and fro through the earth, and that in spite of it, the earth is sitting still and at rest, doing nothing about it.
Right. So it is not the time of they walked out of Egypt or when Christ came, he was still using one nation. But this one is when he has messengers of different nationality. This is the timing of this prophecy, because the horses are different people. They are not only from one nationality, it is different nationalities. This is not the time of the Hebrew. So let's read on and understand on point 3 there, since it is known.
Since it is a known fact that in Zechariah's day, the message bearers were all Jews, a people of one race and one nation.
Right?
The symbolism is positively applicable to a day in which God appoints evangelists of various races and nationalities,
Right?
whom he sends to and fro through the earth to all nations.
Right. So this is the day when he now uses different nationalities. For we saw his people at one time were only one nation, which was the Hebrew nation. But now is the time where he's using different nationalities proclaiming about his messages. So these are messengers with different nationalities. Now, all these positive.
All these positive identifications clearly point out that the horses represent the first day Adventists who arose between the years 1833 and 1844 and who then fulfilled this symbolical prophecy by proclaiming the second advent of Christ to every Christian mission world over, but having confused the cleansing of the sanctuary,
Right.
the purification
so
of the
we see
church.
Millerites in 1833 to 1844. These are the ones pointed by these horses. They used different nationalities to preach the message of the advent of Christ, of the coming of Christ. These first day Adventists, they were still keeping Sunday. They proclaimed the coming, but they confused the event by saying Christ was coming on earth. Yet Christ was going into the Holy of Holies. These are they who came and said, we have proclaimed the whole world is sitting still. It's peaceful and still. Now let's read what exactly happened. Right? And having confused the cleansing of the sanctuary, which is in Daniel chapter 8, verse 14. That's the message which raised William Miller.
But having confused the cleansing of the sanctuary, the purification of the church, the work of the judgment, harvest, by separating the wheat and the tares, the good fish from the bad fish, the wise virgins from the foolish, the sheep from the goats, the wedding garment dressed guests, and from those who had not the wedding garment. This judicial work commences first among the dead, book work only of the course, Daniel 7 verse 10.
Right.
Then among the living.
So they confused that. For them, they say the end has come to an end. The coming of Christ on earth. But there was this work still there in front. The work of the harvest was still future to them. So they had confused it. As Daniel's prophecy.
As Daniel's prophecy of chapter 8, namely the 2,300 days, pointed out that the judgment work was to commence in 1844 AD.
Yeah, because the very 2000, Daniel 8 verse 14 was pointing to unto 2,300 days, was pointing to 1844, that the sanctuary will start to be cleansed from 1844. So they misread that and thought it was the coming of Christ, but instead they were supposed to start the harvest, right?
But as it was mistakenly understood that the world was to come to an end instead, they were greatly disappointed
Right?
when the set date came and nothing happened.
So that's the sitting still. They went through everywhere. These messengers, they proclaimed to say, we have gone through, we have preached the coming of Christ. And we were hoping Christ was going to come. But what did they find out? The world was only sitting still. Nothing happened on that day. They watched the time of the coming of Christ. Christ had a date on that day, and he had a time for coming. And they watched. Everyone was gathered to see Christ coming. Nothing happened. And they say, we have gone through the world. That's why Zechariah chapter 1 is there for us to say, we have gone through the whole world, and the whole world is sitting still. These are the speckled and the white and red horses. That's what they proclaimed. You understand? So this is all the information that we have. We are saying this is history for us. It's history which is acceptable for us. It's a fundamental belief. That's what happened in 1844. The whole world was sitting still. Christ never came. Right. Now read on. So they were greatly disappointed. So that's where we said, so start where saying concerning the scope of their work.
Concerning the scope of their work, the Great Controversy, page 368, has to say this.
Right. So you go to Great Controversy, page 368. You find what the Great Controversy says.
The writings of Miller and his associates were carried to distant lands. Wherever missionaries had penetrated in all the world, were sent the glad tidings of Christ's speedy return. Far and wide spread the message of the everlasting gospel. Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment.
Multinationals, they went different countries proclaiming the coming of Christ in 1844. So these are the red horses, the speckled, they are all different nationalities. They proclaimed the coming of Christ, but they came back and said the world was sitting still, right? Thus it was the horses.
Thus it was that the horses, messengers, thought their work was finished.
Right?
But the angel who really knew the facts and saw God's people still in captivity, still away from their homeland, while the heathen were at ease, pleaded for their action.
So now we'll see them pleading on verse 12. Because what was wrong at that time? Why Christ wouldn't have come, really? It was a nightmare to see Christ coming in 1844. Why? Because the very church was still out in the wilderness when it came from Jerusalem. You know, the woman was given eagle's wing to fly in. Now the church is still out. How can Christ come and find the church out in the wilderness when he left it in Jerusalem? When Christ went to heaven, he left the church in Jerusalem. And that's the early Christian church was in Jerusalem, established in the headquarters, where it is allocated for that, so that they keep all the feasts in accordance. That's why in the Day of Atonement, Pentecost, it was well after the cross. They received the former rain in Jerusalem. So the church was supposed to continue. If Constantine didn't disturb it, in the early Christian church was supposed to continue keeping the feast at the right place. That's why it was established. But because of the persecution, the woman was given eagle's wings to fly to the wilderness, to be kept only until 1798. And the woman enjoyed in the wilderness, and it's still, until today, is still there. But let's hear.
Then the angel,
verse 12, right?
Then the angel of the Lord answered and said,
Right?
O Lord of hosts,
Right.
how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem?
Now, the angels now came to those. We have gone through the whole world. The earth is still. We have proclaimed these messages. They said, we have proclaimed the coming of Christ, and nothing happened. And things are business as usual. was business as usual. Now, the answer comes, it says, the angel of the Lord answered and said to these speckled, and these messengers, O Lord of hosts, he's asking now, O Lord of hosts, asking God, how long wilt thou have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah against which thou hast had in indignation these 70 years? Now, he's asking, how long will the woman who fled into the wilderness, how long is he going to stay there establishing his headquarters or her headquarters in the wilderness? How long, when you said unto 1,260 days, the woman was given that allocation from 538 AD to 798 AD. But the woman is still there in the wilderness. How long then? Jerusalem is empty of the church. The church has to go back to Jerusalem. How long is this woman going to stay in the wilderness? This is the question the angel asked God. How long? Listen, because of course, you know in Revelation chapter 12, the woman was given eagle's wings to fly into the wilderness. And the woman fled, was only to be fed for 1,260 years, which are the years of the Dark Ages. Fled into the wilderness. But when the persecution finished, the woman was supposed to be back. Now, the angel is asking, how long then? Because the space where the early Christian church was established is still vacant. It's still not the headquarters of the church. How long will that be? That Jerusalem has got no headquarters. How long? Listen, here it says, then the angel, it says, how long? Right. Now, let's hear the interpretation there of on the next paragraph. It says, the prophet Jeremiah.
The prophet Jeremiah's prediction that the Jews were to spend 70 years in Babylonian captivity had ended, although they were still in Babylon.
Right. This is the prophets, the type. 70 years finished when they were in Babylon. Did they go back to Jerusalem? They didn't. Just a few went, but not all. 70 years, they knew exactly that Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah had prophesied that they should stay for 70 years. But after 70 years, they remained there in Babylon. Now, we were also in, this is our type. In our antitype, we were also told that the woman would fly in Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. It says, the woman was given eagle's wing to fly into the wilderness. For how many years? For 1,260 years. But like the type who went to Babylon, they never stopped staying in Babylon. They were enjoying in Babylon. They never went back. Do you understand? Only a few went back. Now here, Jeremiah had already told them exactly should be 70 years. That's why Daniel was praying for them. I was praying, seeing that the 70 years is past now. You understand? So here in our time, the prophet of today also is saying, how long? How long? Which is through the angel. The angel is still talking to God. How long will this woman be out in the wilderness there when it was the headquarters of the Christian church was established in Jerusalem? So how long now? Because we understand the woman fled because of persecution. There was a lot of persecution in Jerusalem. Yes, it was when the times and laws were being changed, which was the establishment of the early Christian church, was these statutes and judgment and commandment, and they are the ones being changed, and they are the ones that caused the woman to fly into the wilderness, because when they were saying, no, we still have to keep the Pentecost, we still have to keep the Passover, we still have to keep the Sabbath, we still have the persecution was going on, so God said, let them go to the wilderness. And then in the wilderness, they stay there. No statutes. They actually went to nail them. Why? Because we heard that the devil changed tactics. When the woman fled into the wilderness, the devil said, okay, instead of persecuting them, these Christians are becoming many. Let's befriendly them. So that's why instead there was a compromise. The devil now said, they will start not keeping those statutes. But as a law now, they develop policies and everything procedures so that they don't keep the statues. Because they ran away because of the times which are being changed. You understand? But they will start compromising, and these times will be. We saw it in Revelation chapter 12. The prophecy is there. It said the woman, the dragon took what the dragon took water and swallowed it. Read the whole chapter of Revelation 12. Swallowed water and spewed the water to the woman. And the water is in Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, is peoples, multitudes, and tongues. So there are several people which were thrown into the woman to lead the woman to change these feasts completely and eradicate them. This is where we are. That's the prophecy. Now here we are being told that the prophet Jeremiah had predicted. Right, let's start from there. Mm-hmm.
The prophet Jeremiah's prediction
Mm-hmm.
that the Jews were to spend 70 years in Babylonian captivity
Right?
had ended, although they were still in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
But since this symbolical prophecy finds its fulfillment in our day instead of Zechariah's day, the angel's plea for mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, therefore, finds its direct application in this day.
Right?
There is, however, this parallel. The time of the Babylonian captivity overlapped some years in the time of returning to Jerusalem.
Now, instead of them to go back to Jerusalem on the dot on 70 years, it overlapped. The 70 years passed, they remained in Babylon. Now, with us, the 1,260 years passed, but we are seeing the red and speckled and the white. These we have identified that these were the Millerites. You understand? So, the Millerites, they expected the coming of Christ. Instead, Christ didn't come. But what happened? We see this angel asking God, how long will this woman continue to be out there? Listen to, you will hear the answer. Will tell you that in 1844, something happened. Yeah? Now, read on. Uh-huh.
There is, however, this parallel. The time of the Babylonian captivity overlapped some years, the time of returning to Jerusalem.
Right?
In like manner, John's prediction that the church should return to the vineyard after having spent 1,260 years in the wilderness
Right?
had ended.
This is in Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. It says they should be there only for 1,260, which is the antitype of the 70 years. They were supposed to be in Babylon for 70 years, but they stayed on after 70 years. They still overlapped. But here, we were told that we will have established our headquarters outside Jerusalem for only 1,260, but the time is overlapped in the time of Miller. You understand? We are talking about the red and speckled. It was in the time of Miller, right? Mm-hmm.
In like manner, John's prediction that the church should return to the vineyard after having spent 1,260 years in the wilderness, in the lands of the Gentiles, had ended and even overlapped since the year 1798.
That's when
and there was no sign.
The Dark Ages stopped in 1798, but there was no sign. No, the church did not even have any sign to say they will go back to Jerusalem at all. The woman forgot where she came from, forgot everything. I'm saying we are in the topic. Who are God's people at the time? At the time when Christ comes. Now read on.
And there was no sign as yet for her returning.
No sign until today in 2020. There's no sign. No sign at all. Actually, there's prosperity there in Babylon. Instead of coming back, this is what happened. When they went to Babylonian captivity 70 years, there was no sign of coming back. They overlapped the period. You know, those who give visas, when you go to a foreign country, you are given a visa to stay for how many, when they say 3 years or 4 years, it means on the 4th year, on exactly the dot, the 4 years is finished, you should go back. If you don't go back, that's the visa. You have overstayed. It's illegal. So now that's what happened to the woman. The woman was told exactly. Let's hear the verse, Revelation 12. Go to Revelation 12, verse 6. The woman was given exactly the time to stay out in the wilderness, out of Jerusalem. Establish headquarters out But the woman stayed on. Is overstayed. Right? 12 verse 6, yeah?
Verse 6.
Mhm. Come when I'm here in the wilderness. You understand? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Right.
and
So-
as the church
Uh-huh.
was in no condition to accept additional truth,
The woman is in no condition now to accept any present truth. Nothing should be new. That's why the woman is stuck. When Sister White left in the third angel's message, the woman never even progressed to these other two more. When the Bible says, Revelation chapter 14 is 5 angels' message, and supported by the spirit of prophets, the word to the little flock, page 10.5 says there are 5 messages coming to the church, not 3. But the woman is stuck because the woman was supposed only to be nourished there for 1,260 years. Actually, it says in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, the law will come from Zion in the last days. So the woman is in a wrong area. A wrong area. The woman has to go. Back. Right? Mm-hmm.
and as the church was in no condition to accept additional truth,
Right?
the results are that the church is still in the wilderness concerning which inspiration said, if the people of
Now,
God...
here we are reading from General Conference Bulletin 1892. This is what was said in the Spirit of Prophets, General Conference Bulletin 1892. What is it? If the people
of God had gone to work as they should have gone to work right after the Minneapolis meeting in 1888, the world could have been warned in 2 years and the Lord would have come.
Right. This is what Sister White says. If the church had agreed to God to take the 1888 message by A.T. Jones and Wagona, God could have just spent 2 years to come. What was the message telling them? Telling them to keep the ceremonial law, the statutes, and the judgments. These guys, they brought these 2 laws, the moral law and the ceremonial law from the Galatians chapter. So, if they accepted that, they were supposed to start keeping the statutes and judgments. And this was going to make God whisper to the woman to keep them properly in Jerusalem. So God would have come only 2 years. They were supposed to inform each other 2 years, and after 2 years, Christ was going to come. But they rejected the 1888 message. And that's why the woman is still in the wilderness. That's why Christ had to take another. You know, when the probation was supposed to finish, but God in his mercy gave himself more time so that you and I would have the prophet Elijah to have the statutes and judgment, and Christ would come. This is what he was waiting for. And He couldn't have come in 1844 because they were not keeping the statutes. They were not keeping the statutes and judgment. They should be, when they were keeping the statutes and judgment, they should be knowing that the woman should be going 3 times a year to Jerusalem. Now, let's go to the next chapter. This message.
This message now positively declares that her wilderness sojourn is about to end, and that soon will she stand on Mount Zion
That's
with
why
the
at
Lamb.
last we will now see Revelation 14 verse 1 shows us that the 144,000 will stand on Mount Zion. Why? This is now the current woman who has accepted the statutes and judgments. So why 144,000? Because they are the ones who will receive this seal. How do they receive this seal? The first one is God, as to early writing, page 15. It says, God, New Jerusalem, and a glorious star containing Jesus' new name. So when they accept this seal, New Jerusalem, it's the keeping of the feast. That's why now you find them there. Why would you think when everyone is scattered in the whole world, then all of a sudden we see the 144,000 on Mount Zion in Jerusalem? Why? Why would they be there? If you think people will just be saved where they are, so why are they in Jerusalem on Mount Zion? Why are they there? It's because the woman finally accepted. God doesn't care whether you have a doctorate or a PhD in theology or what. As long as you do not accept his statutes and judgment, he doesn't even look at that. He doesn't look at all these qualifications if they do not have his statutes and judgments, his commandments. If they don't have those, forget. It's only your own high shoulders. But God will only look and admire those who take up his laws, his feasts, his commandments as he designed. And they start keeping their feasts 3 times a year in Jerusalem. He will salute those. That's why Malachi says he will bring the hearts of the fathers to the children and the heart of children. They will be together. How are they together? Because they are keeping the same days. They keep the Sabbath, they keep the new moon, and they continue, even in heaven, in new heaven and earth, keeping Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22, keeping the Sabbath, the new moon, the Pentecost. They are together with the woman. God cannot call it a woman when the woman is not keeping all these days that belong to God. God is alone without the woman, but he will have those who are sealed to take up and go back to the metropolitan capital where Christ established the Christian church. You understand? Now, read on where you
from this analytical point of view is again seen that the angel's plea for mercy on Jerusalem and the cities of Judah is applicable directly to the people in our day and only indirectly to the people in Zechariah's day.
So this plea in 1844 for the angel, after the speckled horses and the red horses were saying, we have proclaimed the coming of Christ, but the world is sitting still. So the plea of the angel in 1844 was to God to say, how long then this Jerusalem, when are they going to start keeping these feasts 3 times a year? How long is the woman going to sit still like that? How long will the woman be in the wilderness without coming back to the capital city where you established the Christian church? How long? Now, let's hear verse 13, the answer.
And the Lord answered.
How did God answer this angel in 1844? Right?
And the Lord answered the angel
Right.
that talked with me with good words and comfortable words.
Listen to the good words that God says, right? We are in Zechariah chapter 1, verse 13 and 14, right?
So the angel that communed with me said unto me, Cry thou, saying,
Right.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts,
Right?
I am
I'm
jealous
jealous.
for Jerusalem
I'm jealous for Jerusalem.
and
man.
for Zion.
I am jealous for Jerusalem. That's the answer to that angel. In 1844, when people had no sign of Christ coming, but they have proclaimed the coming of Christ and the world is sitting still. And then the angel knew exactly why Christ didn't come. It's because the woman is still out in the wilderness. It's not back to the metropolitan. Now, he said, how long upon this Jerusalem? Nothing is happening. How long? It was in 1844 that question is being asked and answers. The answer, God says, I'm jealous. I'm jealous for Jerusalem. I'm jealous. Now, why would he be jealous for Jerusalem? I'm jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great
great
jealousy. Now, this is the greatest jealousy heaven has, to see a woman settled in the wilderness without even having nothing to do with the feasts. When the early Christian church was keeping all the feasts in before the woman was given the eagle's wing, they were there after Christ had long gone. You can hear even Christ himself. We saw in the verse last week, was saying that Christ, after taking the Passover, instituted that feast which was to commemorate his death. We saw it in Great Controversy, page 399. He instituted the feast. Now you dare, the woman is out in the wilderness, dare tell people that the feast were nailed to the cross. You know what? Read deeper. The woman, if the woman was back to the metropolitan city where she was supposed to be nourished, this woman could be knowing that the feasts were instituted in the New Testament by Christ so that they will be kept this way and that way. But because it stayed without nourishment, it's ignorant of what is happening, ignorant even of the times, even of this new moon. The woman is ignorant. Today is the beginning of the month of Tebet, ignorant of everything. The tabernacle comes and the wrong dates and everything, and Passover comes. No one knows. Even the world knows it's Easter, at least. But the woman knows nothing about it. Nothing. Why? The time for nourishment was 1,260 days. The time for the nourishment for the woman should heads up. Someone should heads up and say, you were supposed only to be nourished for 1,200, which is 1798. It was done. That's why the angel is saying, how long? What about this Jerusalem? They're expecting you to come when they're still out there in the wilderness. What about the metropolitan, where the X was done by Christ to say, this is where I have established the Christian church? But because the persecution came through Constantine, when they were refusing for the times of the religious feast to be changed, they were refusing. That's why they were dying. So God had to establish them out in the wilderness. But the persecution is long gone. The woman now is now telling us other things that are not even in the Bible. Even the pagan feasts, they are there. They are not even in the Bible. But what is in the Bible, the woman doesn't even want to hear. Let me tell you one thing. God will still establish his church in the metropolitan city. Whether the woman likes it or not, God will still have his people. That's why he's endorsed it in the Bible that the law will come from Zion. That's why he's endorsed it in the Bible that the 144,000 are standing on Mount Zion. 144,000. Let me tell you one thing. Don't worry. Don't worry about how many break to be Sabbath keepers. But what about of the Sabbath keepers? How many are keeping the feast? How many are? Because they are the ones who will sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. What is it of Moses? Moses is the one who was given this feast, these statutes. That's why Hebrews chapter 10 tells you that do not say I will accuse you. There is one ready to accuse you. It's Moses who you trusted in chapter 5, John chapter 5, verse 45. He said, don't worry, I will not give you any crime, but the very Moses that you believed is the one waiting for you to give me to say, didn't you read the 5 books where I wrote about the statutes and judgment? Didn't you read? Did you not find out what I elaborated? Moses went to elaborate in Leviticus chapter, talking about the 10 commandments one by one, talking about the statutes one by one. God says, he is there waiting for you. He's there. He's going to wait for you and find out what happened to the Pentecost, what happened to the Passover, what happened to the Feast of Tabernacle, what happened to the dates and the calendar, what happens. The months are written in the Bible. We have read them. We have read the month of Shebat we saw, month of the 10th month, which is Tebet, the 6th month, whatever. Where is this? The woman doesn't even know this calendar at all. Is busy now with all the Gregorian feasts. But let's go back to the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible. That's why God will send a prophet in the last day to send people back to the Bible, back to his counting in heaven. Otherwise, we will say the harvest is past. The summer is ended. We are not saved. This is what will happen. It says so in Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 7 to 8. They will say, how were people saved? The turtle, the dove, they know the time of the appointed times of God. They know. But what we as a people, we didn't know. Lord, they will say, the summer is ended. The harvest is past. We are not saved. Why? They did not keep with the calendar. It's the calendar which is important. That calendar from God is what is in the Bible, is his design. When he sends Zachariah, he knew exactly it was the second month of the reign of Darius on the 8th month of the year. He knew that. He knew when he sends any prophet, he knows the date according to the counting in heaven. So those in the counting of heaven are the ones who know how to keep the Sabbath and how to keep the new moon as it will be in the new heaven and new earth. To keep all the feasts as it will be. And these are they who follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. You understand? It's so amazing. Let's hear again. Who are these people? Who are God's people? Now he says, God answers, and the Lord answered in verse 13, Zechariah 1 verse 7. He answered and said, the angel that talked with me with good words. You see, they say these are good words. That good words and comfortable words. It's verse 13 I'm reading. Good and comfortable words. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, cry thou, saying, thus said the Lord of hosts, I'm jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy. You understand? Why is he jealous? The X was done. Where the feast should be kept. No woman. How many times? Check where the woman is today. Just today, only new moon. Check where the woman is. That's why God is jealous. Check when it is a feast of Passover. Check where the woman is. That's why God is very jealous. Very jealous. He says, I'm jealous. I'm really jealous. Because I said this for the 3 times a year for the feast to be kept. And check even the very tabernacle which they say, we are now only left with the tabernacle. Check the date of it. He is jealous. It's so unpredictable. And yet the pagan feasts, they have a date. Christmas, they tell you that is 25 December. It never changes. The date continues to be 25. It never goes to 23 or 20. They have a date. But they are so precise with that date. But they're not precise with the dates of the tabernacle. Let me tell you one thing. God is jealous. God is jealous with the jealousy. He is jealous. Now, let's hear rather. Okay. Rather than saying on 1 Teach 11.
Rather than saying, Zion shall be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps. The Lord expressed his great jealousy for them, and commanded his servants to cry yet and say.
Right. Now, how does he is now commanding on verse 16 now, Zechariah chapter 1, verse 16. Now he says, cry then and say,
Therefore, thus saith the Lord, thus saith the Lord, I am returned.
Whether the woman is not there in Jerusalem, but God is saying, you can stay, woman, you can stay in the wilderness. But I am, in verse 16 says, I am returned to Jerusalem with the mercies. Listen, whether the woman refuse, but God is back on. Yeah, because people say, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in AD, whatever, and whatever. But yes, it was. But he says in 1844, after the speckled horses, the speckled horses and the red horses say, the earth is still, and the angel says, what about Jerusalem? It's empty. But God said, the woman is not coming. But let me tell you one thing. I'm returned to Jerusalem. One. So you know, he returned to Jerusalem. Which year? 1844. When he did not come on earth, instead he went to Jerusalem. This is what we are finding from the scripture, brethren. It says, the woman can stay. I'm jealous. But tell the woman, I'm back to Jerusalem. I'm back. Now read properly 16 and 17. Let's understand it.
The Lord expressed his great jealousy for them, and commanded his servants to cry yet and say, Therefore, thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies.
Right?
My house shall be built in it.
Now, he says, you go and stay establish your houses outside in the wilderness. But now in 1844, he says, I'm back. I'm back. And what is he going to do? My house now is in Jerusalem. Did you hear that? Did you actually hear why the 144,000 were standing on Mount Zion? Because he established the house back in 1844 when he did not come. He's back. He couldn't come because the woman was still out. The woman was still out there. But now he says, I'm jealous. Where I should meet the woman is in Jerusalem, where she came from. But now, listen, I'm back. And what will he do when he's back? In verse 16 and 17 it says, I'm back and I'll establish my house. Did you hear? Now read on.
My house shall be built in it,
Right.
saith the Lord of hosts.
Right?
And a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem.
You see, now he's actually from 1844, he says, a line will be stretched forth from Jerusalem, where the metropolitan city was with the early Christian church. He says, I'm back in 1844. He's back. He's back. And what?
Cry yet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, my cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad,
Right.
and the Lord shall yet comfort Zion, and
Right.
shall yet choose Jerusalem.
Right. Did you hear that? Now, so what does it mean? When Sister White was raised in 1844, God knew that the woman was still in the wilderness, because that angel proclaimed to the speckled ones, the speckled horses, and he proclaimed to God that, okay, what about Jerusalem? Because he was about to come, and the messengers preached the wrong message that is coming on earth. But he was not. So the angel is saying, what about Jerusalem now? It's still empty. The woman is not there. And now the answer is, I'm back. The woman doesn't come, does not want to come, is settled, is overlapped, like they did in AD 70 in Babylon. He's overlapped now, is Babylonish there. But what will happen is, I'm back to Jerusalem, and I'll stretch a line there. I'm back. What will I do in Jerusalem? I'll build my house there. I'll build. So it means when he built the house in 1844, that's when then, 1888, he decided to send for the woman. He sent these two guys, A.T. Jones and Waggoner, to the woman. And the woman at Minneapolis, the camp meeting which was at Minneapolis, it's there in selected message, page 233 to 234. It says, at Minneapolis, they threw the message upside down. They refused adamantly in 1888. The woman refused, and God recorded that they refused. They did refuse. Now, he's saying, what was A.T. Jones and Waggoner supposed to do to the church at that time? When they rejected, they did reject. Yeah? And when they did reject, the woman wouldn't come. The woman stayed on, overlapped on. But if they believed that message, then they were then going to start keeping these two laws, the ceremonial and the moral. By ceremonial, I'm not saying killing the lambs, but keeping the feasts, as they were changed even after the cross by the Dark Ages. They were changed by the beast in Dark Ages. So the feasts were still there. You believe that. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, in Good News, it tells the festivals were still there. Festivals and the laws, they were changed in 538 AD and 1798 AD. Well after the cross. The church knows that you don't read. So they just say they were nailed, and nobody is inquisitive to ask if you are saying they are nailed. What about these ones which were changed in the Dark Ages well after the cross? They know that you don't even know that because you don't read. So if they were readers, they wouldn't say that. So, but the A.T. Jones message, if it was received, the woman would have started keeping the feast the proper way. And Christ was supposed to come after 2 years. This is what we heard from General Conference Bulletin. Yeah, we gave the page earlier on. So, because the woman rejected, so God proclaimed that, right? They also rejected 1888. The woman is no longer coming, but it says, I'm back. I'm back in Jerusalem, and I will build my house there. That's why finally in the end we see Christ standing on Mount Zion with 144,000 on Mount Zion. So the woman finally went back with other people. But there are others who never joined in. Only the selected 144,000, they went back. Right? Now, read on there. So it says, my city, cry yet saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, my cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad. You see, he is promising that when the woman is back, When Christ is back in Jerusalem, the cities also on New Jerusalem will be spread abroad. And the Lord shall yet comfort Zion and shall yet choose Jerusalem. This one was in Zechariah chapter 1, verse 16 to 17. Now, if you are saying, Jerusalem has been abandoned and now we are waiting for the new Jerusalem in heaven, nothing to do. What about these prophecies? What do they mean to you? Now, read the commentary in 1 TG 11. Since the light.
Since the light on these prophecies is now shining on our pathway for the first time since Zechariah wrote them, and since this message is now being broadcasted throughout Laodicea, the truth that the Lord at long last has returned with mercies is very obvious. After the disappointment in the year 1844,
Right?
the messengers of the truth in Christ were told to cry yet and say, Thus saith the Lord of hosts,
Right.
my
We
cities.
have read that verse. So go to the, so it was that.
So it was so it was that just as soon as the set date in 1844 passed and the people's hopes failed, the Lord encouraged them by giving to Sister White a vision of the ingathering of the first fruits.
Now that's why God had to give the vision to Sister White in early writing, page 15, which says, what does it say? Go to early writing, page 15. We always read it, but it's nice to read it again. Verse 15. Page 15. That's why Christ had to give Sister White that vision, because people were now, their hopes had failed, but he still had to show her to see that 144,000 will come from the church. Now,
the 144,000 were all sealed
right?
and perfectly united.
Right?
On their foreheads was written, God, New Jerusalem, and a glorious star containing Jesus'
Why
new
did
name.
he give that vision? Because he was showing that the woman is still going to be back on Mount Zion with these three seals: God, New Jerusalem, and a glorious star containing Jesus' new name. Now go back to this. So it was that. Yeah?
So it was that just as soon as the set date in 1844 passed and the people's hopes were failed, the Lord encouraged them by giving to Sister White a vision of the ingathering of the first fruits.
Right.
The 144,000,
Right.
the first to get to Mount Zion
Right.
and there to stand with the Lamb.
That's why the vision was given. So that they don't lose hope. That they still, the ingathering of the woman will be there on Mount Zion, the 144,000 completely sealed. So what happened then?
So they started out again with a set goal to gather the 144,000 guileless servants of God.
That's why we have a sealing process. What is the sealing process? To make sure the 144,000 stand on Mount Zion with the three seals: God, New Jerusalem, and the glorious star containing, right?
Those who were to be used for the ingathering of the second fruits, the innumerable multitude out of all nations. But as time went on, rather than working with God, the denomination backslid by unbelief in the spirit of prophecy.
No, that's what we find in volume 5. Where was their backsliding? They lost hope in the spirit of God. Now go to T5, Testimonies to Ministers, volume 5, page 217.
The church.
Right? Yeah.
The church has turned back from following Christ, her leader.
That's how they just say, okay, enough is enough. They stopped following Christ, the leader.
And is steadily retreating
That's
toward
what
Egypt.
These testimonies say they steadily now go back. Right? Now go back to the way you were reading. And that's the church. Thus they lost sight of the truth.
And thus lost sight of the truth that was yet to be unfolded, and the which is now brought to light.
The only thing that any people can lose truth is just to say no more. There's no more light coming, or there's no more prophet. There's no more. Now they say enough is enough, and they went back to Egypt. They don't talk of a prophet. They don't talk of any more truth. Everything we have written in our policy is enough until we come. But let me tell you one thing, God will not keep his silence. He raises people to dig deeper and to progress. That's what he does when the church, resort to those tactics of saying no more light, no more. He did it when the reformers started. It's because the people now had no Bible to read. Everything has thrown, and people were kept dark, in dark ages. They were not allowed even the Bible. God had to raise the reformers. Now, when you say no more light, we are done. We are just with the three angels' message. No more. You hear those other two messages coming from somewhere. God is not scared of anyone. He's not desperate of workers. He raises, once people are stagnant and say no more progressing, no nothing, what we are having is enough, he will progress with other people until he gets to 144,000 are numbered and they are standing with Christ on Mount Zion. Right? That's what he does. He's not dependent on anyone. God is not dependent. He raises stones. When people just say, and he's not scared of numbers. He's not even scared of numbers. Look at what happened in Noah's time. He remained with 8. Look at what happened in Lot's time. It's only even Lot lost his wife. He is not scared of all those things. When we see, there are some people who are convinced by numbers. When they see people, there are plenty. Someone preaching in a stadium full of people. They think what I'm preaching is correct. But that does not make error correct. And error is error, whether it's got lots of people, it remains error. And the truth is the truth, whether it's got only one person, it is the truth. So God has nothing to do with these numbers that we break and think we are right. We cannot be right because of numbers. We are right because of it. Thus saith the Lord. Now, read. So it was
that as soon as the disappointment in 1844 came, which is represented by the little book's turning bitter after having been eaten.
We read in Revelation 10, we find that book turning bitter. Yeah.
The angel declared, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. The second Advent movement was then reorganized and the title Sabbath keepers given to it.
Right?
Thus the Lord charged his messengers to cry yet, to proclaim again, to continue preaching the additional light, the judgment for the dead.
Right. So here is seen the inspiration.
Here is seen that inspiration does not at once lighten our path clear to the end.
Right. So let's jump to verse 18 and we see. So because there was disappointment, but we see in Revelation 10 verse 10, they are now being organized to say, you prophesy again before multitudes and tongues and that's why the reorganization started to proclaim. But in 1888, they also refused to go back. But God will not stop until he reorganizes and comes up with a pure church, the 144,000, standing with him on Mount Zion. The woman is going to be back, whether we say nothing. The woman, she should be back where she came from. She should be. Whether it comes with different people or someone or young children or whatever, the woman should be back. Those who are going to be sealed are going to be the last woman who goes back. They will say, after being sealed, they're supposed to be keeping the feast in Jerusalem. Only those who are sealed. If you are not sealed, you continue saying, no, it was nailed to the cross, against everything that comes from God, because you are not sealed. But those who are going to be sealed will know exactly what to do. And let me tell you one thing, they will know. They will know. You can brag of people of numbers. What we have is church militant. And church militant is wheat and tares. So, but the wheat will reorganize. They will reorganize into the 144,000. The wheat, there are not so many. They will reorganize into the 144,000. Right? If I'm a tare, I have my colleagues there. My colleagues are there because it's church militant. If I'm a wheat, I have also my colleagues there. The colleagues are there. Whoever you are, you have your colleagues. It's either you are a wheat or you are a tare. So let's not brag with numbers. We are only including people who are wheat and tare in So it means whoever is leading, if he is a tear, he's got colleagues in there, but not everyone. You understand? And if you are a tear, you've got colleagues there, but not everyone. So at that time, the 1,000 will not mingle with the tares. They will be the wheat only. So let's not play with numbers. We are keeping other people's people. You know? Other people's people. If they are 144,000, they're not yours if you are a tear. And if they are tares and you are a 144,000, those other plenty people are not yours. So that's the problem of breaking with numbers. Go to verse 18.
Then lifted I up mine eyes, and saw, and behold 4 horns. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, What be these?
Right.
And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem.
We will start on that verse. On verse 18 and 19. I promise you, this Sabbath, when we come in the morning, we start with that prophecy. It's a heavy prophecy. It's for you and I to understand exactly what will happen about these 4 horns. Because nobody has proclaimed about these 4 horns, but we have to study them. We have to study this Bible and understand it. We can't be waiting for the soon coming of Christ without knowing some of these chapters in the Bible. You can't go to heaven when you are empty-headed. You are empty-headed, you can't. It's not the singing only which makes you go to heaven. It's the study. It's the truth, the seal of the truth in your head. Is the one that will give you the better mark where when the angel is destroying will leave you because you've got a mark. May God bless the new one. Blessed new one to everyone.